looks a lot
You
taller
should
than
be
me.
good to go.
Look it up.
I sure look short.
We don't have any of the comments on the side, so we don't know if anybody's watching, but I'm sure
There's a bunch of people watching.
bunch of people watching. Hello, bunch of people.
You do look tall.
Hmm?
You do look
That's
tall.
because I got a shorter chair.
I'm just way taller than he is. We all know.
I'm just really short.
He owns the place.
No, he owns the place. I just work here. Grossly overpaid.
We all know who the boss is.
Oh man.
Welcome, everybody. As you know, we usually start early and just give you an opportunity to talk to us, ask questions, do anything that you'd like to put into the conversation. Now is the time to do that. We're here tonight with Dick Singh and John Underhill, and you know I'm Ed Brown. We are unfortunately without Mark Dreyer. John Mark had a prior commitment, so unfortunately, well, fortunately for him, he's got a hobby where he tries to see all the different baseball teams and therefore going to all the different stadia in the United States. And this was his opportunity to not only be at one of those events, but also to meet his son at one of those events. And as a father who has a grown son, I understand what that force is. So we wish Mark nothing but the best while he goes out and enjoys a baseball game tonight. Meanwhile, we have Dean, who is always with us, and today he's actually here. So it's a rare occasion when you see all of us at the same place. There's Dean. There you go.
You don't have to be projected in the corner. You
No.
don't have to be in the corner. Oh,
Uh-oh, you made
it's
it.
taking cues. Oh, there. Yeah.
We are using the cameras that we used last week or last month. If any of you saw that, you probably recognize the event where if we make the wrong gestures, the camera decides to get closer or farther or whatever. So we will do our best not to do too much gesticulation. Instead, we will try to just show you what is interesting about what we're doing in theory.
I don't know about you guys, but I have noticed these new cameras make me look grayer. So
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Although I think in the last month you've gotten grayer. That could be great.
and where I'm sitting, I feel like I've gotten shorter. You guys have gotten taller. So
And I asked Dean if he could make me look anything like Richard Gere. It didn't work.
I'd be first on the list for that.
I think it's this dark background that's kind of
That could be it.
making me look grayer.
Yes,
So.
very good.
Yeah.
However, it does bring out the white in your exotic flanks. So
Some Krylon. I should just shave it off.
No, I didn't want to do
Last time I shaved it off, my wife went, "Ooh, grow it back."
that.
That's funny. I won't grow one because mine would be gray too.
Yeah, yeah. By the time I could grow it, it was gray. So
Jake says hi, Dawn, if you're out there. She
Oh.
is here. Say hi.
Hi, Jake. I should probably go get a computer so I can see the chat.
well, at least tonight you won't have to watch me do this, because I'm trying to squint to read chat.
Yeah, we could put Chad up there, but like I said, I'll call it out.
Yeah, no, you're here. You're doing a good job taking care of that. So
It'd be easier than last time. Last time I was trying to do that and talk, and that didn't work at all.
It worked okay. It worked okay. You had a lot at your fingertips at the time. So do we have any questions that we can address, or should we just sit here and shoot the proverbial?
Harold says I get accused of being an adult simply due to my age. Yeah,
That
feel about that resemble that. Mark Nelson says, while waiting to start, any good video recommendations on sharpening turning tools?
Any good video recommendations that you know? I don't know of anybody that.
Years ago, I did on woodworking at home videos. I did sharpening. Naturally, I'm prejudiced, but
Are those videos still out there?
Yes.
How would one find them? Do you know?
Is that with Chris?
Chris, yeah. I can't really tell you.
No problem.
I don't.
No
I
problem.
don't remember.
Okay.
I'm still
Was
a
it Chris?
dinosaur when it comes
Was
to
it
computers.
Chris DeHutt?
Yes.
Dean might be able to find it. Chris DeHutt. Was it
Woodworking at home.
Woodworking at Home? There is a large series of videos. I've seen a lot of them, and after I watched one, they just seem to pop up every now and then in my YouTube feed,
Mhm.
so it's a little
Mhm.
easier to find. But there is a channel out there, and he's been adding a lot of stuff. So
We're working on getting you a link.
in fact, yeah, that's
Go ahead.
I said that's where I watched. That's part of where I learned to use a skew, other than when you correct me in person. When I watched your video on using a skew.
Thank you.
I can see over his shoulder, and yes, we're getting there. Very shortly, you're going to have a link.
We have 3 of your books out in front here.
Piney says, yes, you use carbide. I have to say, I still like my non-carbide tools a lot, but I just tried a negative rake carbide for the first time ever a couple weeks ago. And it's definitely a different thing on acrylics. Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Yeah, negative rake works very well on acrylics.
However, it is not the answer to everything. I spoke with a gentleman this week who I know, and I know he is a good turner and has been a turner for many years. He was having trouble with bog oak, and he explained to me during the conversation that yes, he was using a carbide tool. In fact, he was using a negative rake carbide tool. Sometime in the fairly near future, you will see a video that I did that night, which has not yet been edited, which is why it isn't up yet, but we'll get there, that is showing turning log oak, but it's showing a regular carbide tool, not a negative rake. And I think for general turning of wood, the negative rake seems to drag. It doesn't seem like it cuts as well. I've cut an awful lot of plastic, as most of you know, and I'm very comfortable cutting it with a regular carbide tool. But if you're having problems with that, yes, when you go to a negative rake, it's easier. That doesn't translate to wood, I don't think.
Or quicker, because negative rake doesn't take as deep of a cut, so you're not going to remove as much material.
Right. But have you ever tried doing wood with it?
I don't think I've tried negative rake on wood. No, in fact, I've been trying to improve my skills of traditional turning tools, and
That wouldn't have anything to do with the guy next to you, would it?
but when you get to hang out with Dick and you get to go to his shop and he hands you a tool and says, "Cut that," and as you no pressure at all, and as you approach the piece and just start to touch down, he says, "Nope," and you back off. And you recalculate what you're doing. You think about it. You go to address it again. He says, "Nope." So I've learned to be very open-minded, and I'm learning, and I appreciate all of your time and effort. And I hope I don't give you too many headaches with that.
Never.
But it is a lot of fun, and I'll be honest with you. When I watch somebody use traditional tools, skews and gouges and anything, when you're comfortable with it, you certainly make it look easy.
Well, I've got a few years of practice.
And I know you've told me, don't be afraid to just put a piece of wood on the lathe and just turn it. Just get used to the cutting tool. Get familiar with it.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. You have to get the feel for that tool.
So I have 2 more questions out there for ahead of time. One of them is going to be easy. One of them, I don't think so. One will be in it only. So I'll go April 1st. April says, both my lathes decided to take a permanent nap. Any suggestions for a new one? And I will say that you'll see in today's demonstrations that Powermatic 2014, which I just bought a month ago and completely love it. So other than that, there's others that have a. How many did you say you had, Dick?
5.
5.
I'll give you a quick answer and then I'll refer to Dick to see if he would agree. I don't think I have ever met a turner who has a reasonable model of lathe that doesn't like it. Generally speaking, they're all made quite well. And what it really comes down to is your budget. The Powermatic is more expensive than any of them. Although they do have some really nice sales from time to time, as we did with Dean. But a Powermatic, a Jet, a Delta, a million others, there isn't a lot of difference in what you're actually having it do. It's going to make the wood go in a circle. So all in all, it really doesn't make a tremendous amount of difference which one you're using. Dick, what's with 5 of them? Do you have one that you say, man, that's it, that they can still get? I mean, we're talking about very different.
I have 3 Vic marks. I have a 100, a 200, and a 300. My 200 is a 16-incher, and that's my workhorse.
Okay.
It's the one that I go to every day. My 300 is a 20-incher, and if I need something big, platter, that's it. It's newer than my other one, and definitely it runs much nicer, I think. But rather than throwing that heavier tailstock back and forth, my 14-incher is a lot smaller. And my 100 is, I believe it runs 8 inches over the bed. It's not very big, but it runs like a clock.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I have been on lathes that I wouldn't want to even think
Really?
about taking home.
Really?
Like the lathe you're looking at here tonight, this one. Now, that one is very nice. This is the first I've seen that, but when I turned it on, I immediately knew it was quiet and run smooth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think a lathe should have some weight. That's to me is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if the controls are handy, everything works easy. I've had some lathes where it takes 2 hands to move everything. Mine, I can move everything with 1 hand,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it neat.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you get used to some lathes. There's some lathes that I would definitely go after. If I was looking for a new smaller lathe, this is a very nice lathe right here.
Mm-hmm.
I like I said, I haven't really run it, but I played a little bit earlier, and yes, it runs very nice. It seems to be right, and we'll see how true it is.
The thing is, pay attention to a couple of things. When I started looking long ago, 10 years ago, when we were working with Exotics, getting it set up, I was looking at what kind of lathes that we want to sell. And I have a good friend, Rob Nelson, who runs a school in Wisconsin, has a bunch of lathes. So I contacted him and said, Rob, I'm thinking I have a Delta in the basement at the time. I like my Delta. I also have used Jet. I like the Jet. What would you think? And he said, the first thing I would look at is parts availability. He said, if you have anything go wrong with it, do they have parts? And he said, on that basis, I would avoid Delta. So this is now 10 years later. I'm not telling you avoid Delta today, but I'm telling you look at whether parts are readily available. Jet is the next step down from the Powermatic. My Jet 1014 that I've only, or 2112, that I've only had for 10, 12, 14 years, something like that, decided last week that it was going to stop working. So I ordered a new one, of course, and then went out and looked around and found out that I could get a replacement switch for $10. And Jet is kind of known for replacement switches. Every manufacturer has their pluses and minuses, and jet is in the switch business. So I bought one for $10 on Amazon. And by the time the new ones were delivered, I had this one running just fine. So if you look at that trade-off, instead of having to buy a new jet, which is $1,400-$1,500, or you can buy them cheaper than that as well if you get them on Amazon. But generally speaking, $1,000-ish versus a $10 switch, and an hour of my time. But those are the things that you can look at and say, well, do you want to replace it in 10 years? Now, I have to admit that the concept of replacing it sounded kind of good anyway, because it's been used a lot. But that's what I would suggest to you. Be aware of what the availability is. If you're not particularly interested in repairing these things, then that's not as big an issue. But honestly, that switch was not very hard to replace. So,
Two things I always look for also, because I was also with the Delta. I don't even know if Delta makes them anymore.
I don't either.
But I couldn't
It's a nice
find.
lathe, though.
I love my Delta, but I couldn't find parts for it when I started having issues.
Yep.
But variable speed.
Yep.
Huge benefit if you're looking at something, get something with variable speed. And I like reverse because you never know when you want to throw it in reverse, and especially around finishing.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Years ago, when variable speed first came out, it was DC motors. Number one, they were kind of noisy. Number two, as you lowered the speed, you lost its power.
Torque.
And with the inverters now, where they do the three-phase motors, absolutely great. And I wouldn't have a lathe without it anymore if I could.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, when I was doing pens, the little jet singles with the belts was great, but the Powermatic, that was the biggest thing that with me was I was jumping at my first variable speed, first one with the possibility of reverse, and yeah, it just does it nicely.
Yeah.
We're at 6:02, so Dick,
at 6:02.
Ed, you wanna?
We are officially opening. I think we've been doing just fine unofficially. So I think the best thing for us to do is to first of all thank Dick for taking his time and coming up here. We are ever so honored to have him here and to have the opportunity to just have a casual conversation. This is not structured. Dick has looked at the lathe for maybe 10 minutes today. Says he's somewhat familiar with what they look like. So with any luck at all, we will be able to have everything work pretty smoothly. Obviously, tongue in cheek, Dick has been around for 30 years that I'm aware of. And we did shows opposite each other for a very short time, but he is a fantastic gentleman and a wealth of knowledge, not only in turning, but the fact that he has a background in tool and die making. Dick just has a degree of accuracy that I can only wish I could come close to someday. So, and of course, he also has the ability to have John under his wing and in his shop from time to time. So,
Well, I'm lucky.
If we're all lucky, John will turn into a halfway decent turner someday.
Don't hold your breath. I always describe you as the Forrest Gump of woodworking because you have had such an impact and influence on so many things that we all take for granted. So, and I know you'll talk about some of that stuff as we move along, but I just, I appreciate all of your input. So,
Well, I appreciate when you're over. One of these days, I'm maybe going to put a broom in your hand.
yeah.
With that, Dick, take the floor and have a good time.
Okie doke. I was asked to say a little bit about lathes, maintenance, whatever. And I think it's kind of important. One of the things that I never see transpire, nobody addresses the spindles. And a spindle cleaner is, to me, very important. All it does is go into your taper and clean it out. Over the years, when I would go to different shops and run their lathes, it would be surprising some of the stuff that I pulled out with one of these things. They're very cheap and very necessary as far as I'm concerned. One of the things that kind of aggravates me a little bit, people say when you get something on your bed, to use a file. Files can do some real damage, especially with people that don't know what they're doing with them. So 9 times out of 10, if you're turning pens, you're playing with super glue, and you're going to get it onto the bed of the lathe somewhere. So the best thing you can do, I have just a putty knife. Now, I've cut off a bunch of it just so it was more stiff and sharpened it naturally. So I could go over the bed of the lathe, and if there's any glue on there, it's gone. It pops it right off. If you start doing it with a file, chances are you're going to take and scratch it. You don't need to do that. But it's not just the top of the lathe. This area in here, that is also a machine surface that gets dirty and messed up. So anyway, when you start doing that, clean the whole lathe. Sometimes I even take the tailstock off, tip it up, and it's dirty on the bottom. You clean that up. So make sure your lathe is clean before you do anything. One of the things that
Going real last, where do you think you can find a more safer cleaner? You can't seem to find one.
I know Craft Supply handle them. I think any of the places with machining or lathe tools and stuff like that will have them.
Jody says Craft Supply doesn't have them. See what we can find.
Give us 2 weeks.
There you go. See what we can
Well,
find.
if they need one bad enough, I got one. One of the things that I think is very, very important is how accurate the lathe is set up. I've got 2 points in here. Now I'll lock it down, and they become pretty darn close. So I'm kind of happy with that. Now, I don't care what lathe you have that's a wood lathe, you're going to have a small, minute amount of play in it. It has to. You have to be able to slide it back and forth. Now, sometimes people talk about having oval pens. This is probably one of the biggest things about having an oval pen if centers and the tailstock do not line up. How do you fix that? I used the file on mine, but I think I knew what I was doing on it. Of course, most of them are not real bad. This one is fine. But I'm going to show you a little trick when it comes to drilling that will help you.
Dick, if your stand or your base isn't square, isn't level on the floor, can that affect?
Absolutely. Years ago, I was at a place and they had an open house in the spring and the fall, and I was doing both of them. And they had one of the new jets come in, and it had the cast legs and everything on it. So, I mean, it was a solid lathe. Checked it out. It was beautiful. So I used it. I came back 6 months later or whenever the next one was, and I put the pieces together, and they missed by a 1/16 of an inch. So I asked the guy, I said, what did you do? Hit it with a fork truck? He says, no, I haven't touched it. It's set in a corner. So I'm sitting there playing on it, and I leaned against it, and the lathe actually went over and aligned itself. So we went ahead and set everything on the legs to balance it out, and it went back to being the proper position. And in my mind, I says, that's cast aluminum or cast steel anyway. how could that move? But it did. So once we adjusted the feet and put it back, it was fine. So like John says, make sure that everything is lined up on the floor also.
Frequently, when when you're working in basements, your floor is set for drainage. I had this problem when I set up my shop at home. Everything that I set up had problems with being out of square. And I ultimately realized that the closer I got to the drain, the more it was out of square. So if you do set up your shop in the basement particularly, don't be surprised when everything is not working right. You have to either make some kind of a stand for it out of wood, or some other way of compensating for the fact that your floor is set up to get the water out of the basement.
Same thing in garages. Garages are the same way.
Garages, yes, that's true. They're usually they're down. They don't usually have a floor drain. At least mine doesn't. But at any rate, yeah, be aware that the floor can be a real problem. About the time you think you got it under control, you don't. So sorry, Dick, didn't mean to interrupt.
Not a problem.
Go ahead.
I'm going to take and talk a little bit about chucks before I do some drilling here.
Nice camera.
Where's that next one?
Okay, this is a 4-jaw long point chuck. And I'm really proud of this. I happen to be the guy that designed the jaws. Okay, now I think it'll do just about everything you want, except there's some variations when you come to drill for pen blanks. If you can see this one here, they're not perfectly square. Is that a problem? In a sense, it is. You put it in here, the wide side is going to catch and the other side is going to be loose. So if you just randomly tighten that down, the blank is not going to be square to your jaws. Is that a problem? Not unless it's really, really thin, but it just, to me, needless. If you use the pen jaws, that same blank will fit down in there. And center itself. So you'll actually end up drilling right down the center of it. I don't have it in there properly. It grabs it tight, self-centers that, so you've got a real good grip on it. When you don't have a good 4-jaw grip on that piece in this chuck, drilling it, it's liable to start chattering and stuff on you also, which is not good as far as I'm concerned. So I always like to, if I'm going to drill a pen blank, I like to use the 2 jaws. Would it work if I took 2 jaws off of this? Yes, if you took the time to line everything up. But you still wouldn't have the grip that you have with this one, because it would not go into the V's on the jaws. And one of the things that I do, it seems like I can never leave everything alone. I always have to modify things to suit me.
So you can see the jaw,
The
see
grooves,
the grooves in there.
the depth of the V's.
That's what Dick is talking about. It actually holds it quite well because it's got those indents.
Yeah.
Now, on that one, if you took off 2, you'd be able to do it if you caught the corners just right, but it certainly wouldn't be anywhere near as good a grip.
Yeah,
No.
It doesn't have the depth, does it?
No, it does not. This is the key that comes with the chuck. And to me, it's long, it's hard to get in because you're way back trying to find it. I always cut mine off. Bam, I got everything real close at hand. It's easy to put in, easy to turn. Now, if I was doing a platter, this gets in the way. But I have more than one chuck, so I have more than one key.
Treasure Maze asks, what about round blanks? How does that differ from, would you recommend a which chuck for round blanks?
Oh, it would do the same thing. I think the round blank would fit in there. Let me open this up and show you. This is actually a V.
Here's a round piece.
So they would fit right up against that V, and you would have a good grip on either side of it. So I would say yes, that grips just as good as anything. $27.64 in there. Would you grab that?
Yep.
I think that's the 3/8. I think one I have. So
Yep. I should have just looked this way.
I've seen one good angle.
Okay, when we go to drill, I don't know if you can see that, the movement.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, the lathe is good in one position, but they have play in here. When I was an apprentice, I was on a lathe, and I had a plus minus 2, maybe -2. I don't forget what it was. And I was working trying to get that dimension, and I could not get it. And one of the old timers was standing behind me. Says, "Boy, you're doing it wrong." This is evidently. This is what I was doing was not taking the backlash out of that lathe. So right now we got a little backlash here. So how are we going to handle that? Okay, the tailstock is loose. I'm going up here. Now I don't know, is it still close? See if you can see this move. It moved towards me. In other words,
Looks like it went up a little bit and then settled down.
it could have very easily. But anyway, right now it has dug a hole on the best position that it can get. Now we can come in and lock our tailstock, and we can drill. You notice nothing moved. There was no movement on that at all.
You also notice if you have a sharp drill bit
It
and
helps.
you're going straight through like that, it doesn't back off every 1/4 inch. If you're drilling it properly, you don't have to worry about the amount of heat that you're generating. A little bit more with plastics, but this will make your work so much faster. And as you can see, the drill bit itself did not shimmy at all as they just putting it in. Right.
Okay, another thing. I have kind of marked this about 1/4 inch from going all the way through. Now I am going to feed it with the tailstock Okay, I'm through. And I can just about guarantee you that that hole is perfect without um, any blowout in it.
Yeah, I have that same problem. I can't find the darn red switch.
It's good. Okay, now, why did I worry like that? What causes a blowout? When that drill goes through, and as the tip gets through, before it can take and make a complete revolution and clean the hole to size, it wants to act like a nut on a bolt and climbs the drill, which blows out the bottom. So you always want to have it locked down and feed it so it can't jump on you. Now, does that work on a drill press? Absolutely. Again, people think that you just take and go to a drill press, put the drill in and just bring it down and hit it. Wrong. Even on a drill press, if you really bring it down slow and watch your drill bit, it sometimes does a dance until it defines its hole. And if you have something like locked down and this locked on your lathe, or excuse me, a drill press, then you've got control of it again. In other words, when that drill goes through, the piece is clamped to here, it can't jump up, so it doesn't blow the hole out. I think that's some of the most important things that you'll find on drilling a hole. Anybody got questions on that, or?
I don't see any at the moment.
Okay. Then seeing how I've got one drilled, I'm going to go ahead and talk about gluing. I do not use cyanacrylate to glue. I use polyurethane, Gorilla Glue. Why? Years ago, when I was doing art shows, I used to make a lot of keychains. I would take my scrap pieces and drill them and glue them together using cyanacrylate, trim them, throw them in a box, and maybe in a month I needed some, or a week, whatever. And I would take and go to drill those up. And when I hit a piece of like diamond wood or corian, very often I spun the tube inside the piece. The cyanacrylate got brittle. So I have changed to polyurethane. Now I don't use it like it says on the bottle. It says I'm supposed to wet everything. I never wet. I just put it together, and I have had no problems. Once I started using that, no matter what I had for keychains, I never spun the tubes again. It also has some good properties that I like. The stuff swells up. When you have it in there, it actually expands. Can be good and it can be bad. When I take and glue this stuff in, I take the tube and I put a little bit in the tube. I take a dowel and I just spread it around in there, just roll it on the tube, sight down. If everything has got a coat in there, I'm fine. Put my brass tube in, put a little dot on that, work it in back and forth and leave it. When I set it down, you set it down flat on something solid flat, like a piece of wax paper on something smooth and flat. By the way, when you use this glue, wear gloves. Otherwise, you wear that black finish for quite a while. Now, one of the things I really like about it, I like wood. I use a lot of wood. And if I have like this is a piece of elm burl, which has a lot of voids in it normally, you can see where the glue has actually protruded through the surface. Now, the only thing you could do if you had this, you would have to paint the tube. And I don't always paint the tube. I don't think it's necessary with wood. But if I hadn't used this, chances are I would have looked down and seen the tube, which I don't like. As you can see, it has swelled up on both ends. That is why I tell you to lay it on something flat, because I have had it where it has pushed the tube out as it swelled up. Of course, that's half of that is using too much glue or having it on an angled surface.
Mike asks, going back to drilling for just 1 second, do you prefer a specific brand of drill bit?
No, sharp one. I think that's the main thing is a sharp one. I sharpen my own bits, so I kind of stay away from the brad points because I don't have the facilities to sharpen those. A regular drill bit, I have no problem sharpening them. Now, somebody's going to look at that and say, wow, that's a real mess. How do you get that thing clean? Well, number one, I take a box knife.
Now we're putting these on YouTube, so of course we have to tell you, be careful, a box knife could be sharp. Okay.
Mine is sharp.
Or worse, a box knife could be dull.
Yeah, then you have to work harder and cut yourself deeper.
Yep.
Clean. Now, to a point. I don't care who you are, what you do, if you glue, you're going to somewhere get glue into that tube. I have a straight reamer. This is a 3/8 and this is a 27/64 drill bit, or that drill this. So when this goes in, it's 5 or 6 thousandths smaller than what the tube is. Number one, it goes in, you lay it flat on the tube and just roll the piece around, and anything that's on there, it picks it right out. I know somebody's going to say, I don't have a reamer like that.
Where can I get a handle like that?
You have
Dixon's shop.
Yeah, I just, while you're doing that, I want to point out, you can see this. You can see these handles. When you go to Dick's shop and you look at the wall, all of his lathe turning tools all have bird's eye maple handles. Everything in there matches with beautiful bird's eye stuff that most of us would be afraid to turn, and you make all of your handles out of it. So
I think they're pretty. Guy
They're
once
pretty.
told me if you can't turn, you should at least have good looking tools. Okay, now if you don't happen to have one of those, I'm sure you have a 3/8 drill. Now, if you put a 3/8 drill in there, number one, if it goes all the way through, it's almost parallel with the entire tube. Now, this is a land right here, the sharp part. Now, chances are you don't use that up at this end, so it's normally nice and sharp, so you can just take that and go around and scrape on the inside of that tube, and it's clean. I've heard people say they use a dowel with sandpaper, they use a file. That, to me, that is wrong, because this tube is used to press pens together with. So you don't want to take and ruin the integrity of it. I'm not ruining anything by doing this other than I'm scraping and cleaning it out. So if you don't have a reamer, take a drill that's close to whatever size you're doing, but not too tight, or if you force one in there, you're going to put marks in the tube anyway. So don't. Find one that's close.
You know, I just want to throw out there real quick. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't turn a handle with maybe a set thumb screw or something in it that you could lock down on the flatness of this drill bit, so you have a nice little handle on your drill.
I'll do that later.
Okay.
Go.
Yeah. That way they're all interchangeable.
2 o'clock in the morning, you'll be making that handle.
Give you another reason to cuss me.
I'm probably one of the few that still use a mandrel. You know, a lot of people use the mandrelless ones, but I kind of like. It's easy for me to put pieces together. Putting 2 of them, holding onto that and sliding the tailstock, sometimes I just don't think it's right. So I like to do it in this respect.
Are you going to talk about squaring, Dick?
Pardon?
Are you going to talk about squaring your blanks?
Squaring
Squaring
your
your
blanks.
Somebody want to put
I'm
that.
going to get to that.
Okay, you will. Good, perfect. I just want to make sure that.
Yep.
There's a question.
That is the one thing that I do not do right now. I put them together on the mandrel and I turn them parallel.
So how much material past the brass tube do you normally have when you do something like this?
I normally glue my tube in. My blanks are normally 1/8 of an inch longer than what the tube is. I rarely use a pen mill on anything bigger than a 7mm blank, because as I get into the larger diameters, I tend to see the pen mill start chattering, and I really don't care for the chattering. So what I do is I turn this parallel. Now, how do I know it's parallel? Well, since 1960, I've had a mic in my hand. Is this necessary? Not really. Nothing says I can't use a calipers, and make sure that it is a parallel. Okay, now, one of the things that kind of aggravates me again, I have had blanks that were not turned, but they were cut to length. And when I looked at them, the tubes, when they were, this is on cast ones, not on wood ones, but
Picking this poor resin caster.
Here it comes.
Yeah.
the tube was at an angle to the outside diameter, and yet it was cut to length. So that tells me that I'm going to have to shorten that tube up to get it square on both ends, which I never much cared for. Does it happen often? My wife came home with a 7mm pen one day, and both at the top and the bottom of, you could see a gap on one side. So both sides were at an angle. Nothing was squared up right. So she handed it to me and says, fix it. So I took it apart and I fixed it. But fortunately, when I put it back together, I could set the length of the refill with the transmission. So I really didn't lose anything other than the fact that I had to trim things up. So I'm always kind of really important that I watch whatever those ends are.
As a resin caster, I always like to leave 1/8 of an inch or so on each end of the tube to allow the turner to flush them up.
Yes, that's good.
And Cindy didn't get that pen from me.
As you folks can tell, John and I are quite good friends.
One thing about the Thursday gatherings, there's always quite good friends. So they've seen an awful lot of this before.
Yeah.
It's not neutral. You're just taking Merck's spot. Pick on each other.
Now, there is one thing I found out about this lathe that I do not like. It has a bar across here where I stand, so either you're in back of it or in front of it.
And that's the moving device.
Yeah,
It's all set up so that I can move it, and I
Well,
agree with you completely. It's a terrible
that-
spot for it.
that's your wheels for moving it. I will say that was the biggest challenge I had when I bought that new lathe was I left mine on the rubber feet so I could adjust it level on my garage floor.
Yeah.
And I've got those things on some of my tools, and I agree that it's in the way. So it took me longer to figure out where I was going to put it than it did for me to put together.
You know, here I have to move them around, so I have to have them on. And there was a time that I could do it by myself, but not anymore. So yeah, they're on wheels, and I apologize.
Now, I showed you how there was a little play in here for drilling. Well, that play is still in here using this mandrel. So what I'll do, I'll start it up, put a little pressure against it, running nice and true now. Now I'll lock this down. If I didn't do that, that little bit of play in here, you could get a vibration. If it's bad enough, you'll get an oval pin. So I have a small 2-inch tool rest. This one happens to be made by Robust. Brun English makes them. And it has a hardened top on it. As you can see, or take my word for it, there's not a mark in here to catch a tool. I keep that nice and smooth. Occasionally I'll get some glue on it, which I'll take sandpaper and just take it off. But I like that small one because I can get in and everything lines up with my blank. Some of the bigger ones you have to go in at an angle, and that's kind of bad for me as far as I'm concerned.
Cool.
Grab the round one.
Both. Which one do you want?
I'll leave the other one on the table. I'll probably need it.
Okay.
Another little trick that I do. I did a lot of traveling over the years, and when I go to another club, I take my tools naturally, and when I get there, I want them to be sharp. So what I do is I take this tool and a piece of wax paper and wrap it, give it 1 or 2 wraps. Then I'll take brown paper and lay it on a flat surface and take tight bond glue, 50-50 to water, paint the whole thing, and wrap that brown paper around this. Set it aside and let it dry. It gets hard. Then I trim it. And then I take heat shrink tubing and go over the top of it. Is it necessary? It was for me because of my tools when I got there were always good and sharp. John has been he's been the guy that's been hollered at in my shop many, many times, even though he wasn't there. Turning wood, I don't end up with all that stuff flying all over the place. And it used to really aggravate me, so I did what I could to stop that. This is a 5/8 spindle roughing gouge. Doug Thompson makes the tool. The reason it's slipping is because the ends are not trimmed. And I'm being a little aggressive right now, trying to show you that I'm getting all this stuff off without getting big ribbons.
Turns are basically synonymous. Turning is dangerous. If you need it, you should wear a face shield. Turning is dangerous. I don't know you are someone to, when you have very good food control. Yes, you should wear glasses and there's wearing glasses. But particularly when you're demonstrating, if you wear a face mask, you will not understand a word that he says.
Yes.
So yes, when you're in your shop, I suspect strongly you'd see a face mask. But when you get into demonstrating, you have to understand that if we did everything the quote safe way unquote, you wouldn't understand a word we said. So that's my short speech on safety. Yes, be safe, but don't be surprised when we're doing it a little differently on camera.
Just so you know, my glasses are safety glasses.
Yeah.
In fact, I went to get new glasses yesterday, and the guy says, "Why do you get those heavy glasses?" He says, "Well, I turn, I use super glue, all that stuff." And I says, "What other lenses can I take and use my pocket knife on to clean them off?" Okay, I showed you that. What do you got here? You know, instead of the ribbons flying all over, that worked for me. And when it comes to like my skew, I'm sorry, but I'm standing awkward right now. So you can see that I can turn that even with the skew and not throw shavings all over. Now, there's one other thing that's going to have to transpire in here. My friend over here has something that he's just brought out. And I think it's, well, no, you get up here and you explain your own.
Well, I think you can give a better explanation. That after all, you designed it. I just manufactured it. You know, I'm a little disappointed you're not covered like a snowman when you're done turning resin like I usually am. So
I don't holler like you did before either.
yeah. All right, so
You're not too nervous up there, right?
I'm trembling. So it's been a few months. Dick was talking about things that he uses on the lathe, and one of the things he had done was he had manufactured a cover to go over the thread on the spindle. And the reasoning for that is, as you're turning, especially with acrylics, as you've seen a lot of these shavings flying up, well, Dick actually had them all under control under his thumb on that spindle roughing gouge, but guys that are more like me, as you're turning and you're getting in here, you're getting ribbons that peel up and curl, and then they drift over onto these threads and get caught, and next thing you know, you've got this bird nest building up on your turning. So then you have to stop it, you have to pull and pry it all away, sometimes cut it off, whatever. And so he had come up with this simple spindle cover, which is basically a threaded cover to match the size of the spindle. And so now as you're turning, and this is only if you're not using a chuck, because obviously your chuck would be over the threads, but when you're turning acrylics and anything under a live center, between centers, whichever you're doing, you've got all these shavings coming up, but nothing's going to stick to this. It's all going to fly off as you're turning. So it keeps everything freed up, and you don't have them ribbons getting pulled up. And I don't know about you guys, but there's been times where I've actually had most of the ribbon off the back side of the lathe, and just one edge of it will catch on this thread. Next thing you know, everything hanging back here gets pulled up in your face, and now you've got this huge bird nest spinning. So Dick said, why don't you take that and manufacture it so that way it's a little easier to print these and manufacture them to fit the lathe than it is to, unfortunately, I don't have the tap and dies this large, like Mr. Tool and Die Maker over here that makes everything he needs out of necessity. But this is what we've come up with. It's basically a spindle thread cover. And so that will eliminate all of that bird nest being thrown in your face. And it's just as simple as screwing it on there. And as you're using it, what I've done, if something starts to get gathered on it as I'm turning, I just swipe over it and it's gone. I've even taken thread or ribbons. Sorry, I've taken ribbons as this is going and just throw it at that to see if it's going to catch and bind up on me. And I haven't had that happen yet. So there's, as Dean just mentioned in the chat, there's
so you don't get to see the chat. I put it up on the thing that yes, John will have these available for 2 different size threads on exotics because there's already 2 or 3 people going, "Oh, I've got to have one now."
Yeah, and so we've got them for the 1.25 by 8 TPI. We've also got them for the 1 inch. So I've got a Powermatic and a Jet, and I've manufactured them to fit both of those very, very easily. So that way, as the spindle turns, nothing is rubbing the front of the head here. And I don't know about the other brands. I know the threads will be the same, but I don't know if there's any distance or gap. If there is, you may have to sand the back off slightly, but I don't anticipate there being any issues. So thank you, Mr. Singh, for your input. Again, the Forrest Gump of wood turning here, because he has influenced so many things that we use.
Regal Pens asks, how can I tell what size I need? In general, it's the same size that you need for your chucks. So you're going to look at the threading that you've got for your chucks and look at and do that same size for.
Or you can measure across your threads. It's either going to be 1 inch or 1.25 inches, more than likely. So just measure the outside diameter of your threads.
Almost all of them. All that I'm aware of, but I'm sure not aware of everything. Almost all of them are going to be 18th per inch. So you're going to have either 1 inch, which would be the Jet and the similars, or the 1.25 inch, which would be the Powermatic and similars. I don't know of any similars, to be honest with you. I don't know. Once you get into the larger lathes, I'm sure there are many. But
and that fits your larger Vic Mark, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
The only ones that American made is one way, and that's a M33.
metric.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And also, I have Harrison short bed that takes 1.5 inches, 6 Whitworth.
Oh my!
And only a tool and die maker would
So,
know that.
Now I understand when you say, open the drawer of that tool cabinet, and you open it up, and there's 6 different sizes of the same tool. All right, it makes sense now.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, when I turn that, I take and make it parallel. And like I said, you could use a mic, you can use the calipers, whatever. But as long as it's parallel, I go down to I have a disc sander with the 0 clearance table on it. In other words, it slides, it's 0 to this way, 0 up and down. So all I have to do is lay it against that, go up and bump it. And the ends come out beautiful. I mean, they're just as clean as could be. So when I look at that, I think when I put my pen together, everything rotates on that. So I want it to be as clean and neat as I can have it. Is it necessary to do that? No. There's pen mills. Everybody's got a little bit of how they do it. This is how I do it. And I don't say that's the only way or the best way. It's just the way that I feel comfortable doing.
One of the questions that will come up, Dick, what grit sandpaper do you have on your?
120.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's another option that I'll use, and that's the V-Block with the center punch rods, and basically you just match the inside diameter of the tube to your rod, and I'll lay this against a miter on my disc sander, and then just slide basically the blank will go on it, and then I'll just lightly slide it up till it touches the disc sander as I'm holding this against the miter, so that way I know I'm squared up. But one thing I want to comment is, I know, like you talk about, you turn it down to remove a lot of that material so that it's a little easier to square up without getting the chatter. That's also very essential when doing snakeskin blanks. And I learned that from you years ago. It's much more beneficial to turn the blank down without squaring your ends, because you put a lot of internal torque on that skin where you'll get slippage from the resin. So it's much easier to turn it without putting too much pressure on those ends, and then sand the ends down, and you'll get less problems with your snakeskin blanks.
And there's far less material left, so it'll be an easier process.
Yes.
Because you're only taking off a little bit.
Yep.
And so yeah.
And then one of the things that I do also, especially in wood, not all the time, but sometimes you get a piece of wood that just doesn't want to cut nice, maybe a little chippy or maybe even a little punky. After I take and turn this or flatten this out, I will take the thin super glue and go around the end. And that just soaks in and just stabilizes that end as far as I'm concerned.
So Betty, if you're out there, this is the stuff to answer the question that you had asked. What Betty had asked about squaring tubes, prepping ends and stuff. So,
Okay. I don't know if anybody noticed, but I have a hunk of cord on my box knife. Very important to me. I have a habit of sticking that in my back pocket. And when trying to get that out of my back pocket sometimes was hard. And now with that tail hanging out there, I have no problem. I just can grab the cord and pull it out. Plus, when it's laying on the bench and there's 4 things on top of it, this is still hanging out. So it just makes it easy for me. Like I said, I can't leave anything alone. I'm not going to go through turning that down and sanding and all that kind of stuff, but I will talk about it. What I like to use, I take my sandpaper. It starts out at 240, 320, 400, and 600. I take a piece and I cut the main piece into strips, 3 by half of the piece. Then I fold them in half. Now that does a couple things for me. It pads it so that when you're sanding, you got something under your fingers. And sooner or later, that's all bugged up. So all you have to do is go like this, and you got fresh paper. Now, my initial sanding, I watch everybody take that paper and go like this across the piece. I disagree with that. I take it like this and run the pen against it and just fold this kind of over. And what that does, it conforms to the shape of the pen and knocks all the high stuff off. It doesn't hit the low spots, but it hits the high and makes it a uniform fit. You've seen me every time at the MPG when we're going over the pens. What's the first thing I do?
Touch everyone.
Yeah.
Touch
Up and down the
everyone.
pen.
And
It's just ingrained in me.
Yeah, it's true. You'll feel more imperfections and you'll see them, won't you?
Yes, absolutely. So by doing that way, it takes and kind of levels out the whole top of the pen, which I like. And then I just go through my grits. When I get down to the end, if I will sand it the length of the tube just to make sure that I don't have any concentric rings. If I do, I normally go back to a earlier grit, because if you keep using the fine grits, all you're going to do is kind of polish it. And on a wood pen, you have flat grain and you have end grain sticking up. So if you just keep sanding and sanding, the flat grain sands faster than the end grain, and then you start getting an odd feel to the pen. It's not round anymore. So, I mean, don't go back naturally if you have to go to a thicker or rougher grit to take and get rid of whatever you need.
Can you talk a little about wet sanding, Dick, if you ever use? I know you do mostly wood, but a few words on wet versus wood versus plastics versus, because that's often asked.
Okay. I'm going to get to that in
Okay.
a few minutes.
No problem.
One of the other things that especially on some of the acrylics, sometimes 600 just doesn't take care of the rings and or the scratches. So I do have 1215 that I cut up, and it's a foam back. What's the guy that was at the MPG selling the?
Yeah, I forgot to.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yep.
that is some pretty nice paper. Everything works fine with that as far as I'm concerned.
So we have a question, Dick,
Yes.
and I'd be willing to bet you could predict the question. You're talking about sanding.
Speed.
What speed do you sand at?
Okay, I'm gonna take and probably raise some real feathers. I sand much faster on a pen. Normally, I don't hardly slow the lathe down at all from when I'm turning it. I just sand it. Most of the people, they say slow it down so the sandpaper can work. I don't know, it's sanding it, so I mean, it's working for me. Uh, I don't use excessive pressure because I don't want it to get hot. Uh, if you have a problem like that, slow the lathe down, do whatever you want. But normally I run it pretty high. I'll be honest about that. Now, if I go to a bowl, whole different situation. But on a pen, we're talking the diameter of my finger. So I don't have a problem sanding that type of a piece fast. I made a lot of ornaments that had real thin spindles on them, and there again, I ran them fast, and I had no problem that way. Now, if it's not working for you, make it work for you. Go to whatever you need to accomplish what you want. I am a bad person for a lot of people who buy a lot of tools. I go to a club and somebody says, well, what angle is that tool ground to?
Yep.
Okay, 33 degrees. Okay, I go home. 33 degrees. John comes in, same tool. What do you grind yours at? 41 degrees. Pretty soon the tool's getting shorter and shorter, and the manufacturer's getting richer.
Yeah.
My feeling on when it comes to that stuff, you're going to hit a point to where things work for you. And to make it work for you, you're going to have to use it time and time again. So if you change it every time you go to the lathe, you're never going to find that spot where everything works for you. I think John can agree. He's mentioned that before. I walk up to a piece, I lay it down, and it's cutting. Okay, I know where my bevel's at. I know where things are accustomed for me. If I grab somebody else's tool, I have a hard time cutting with it until I find where the bevel is at. So, I mean, as far as sanding or anything that we do here, what I do is not the proper, or maybe not the proper. Do what works for you. This works for me. That's why I'm explaining it. That doesn't mean that I'm right. It means it works for me. Again, somebody's going to ask, well, what speed do you turn? I don't know. I never pay attention to that. I move at a certain rate. If my speed is where I'm cutting it, and when I lay that tool up there, it just automatically goes along, and as it cuts the piece off, it automatically slides over. That's what I'm looking for. If I got to push it over, I might be too slow. If I go up there and it's kind of chattering, and well, maybe the speed is too fast. There's generalities when it comes to speed, but I really feel you should turn to whatever speed works for you with that particular tool. If that sounds bad, well, I'm a bad person. But
Well, and the reason we laughed in the beginning when we talked about speed was because of a past story where somebody asked you, how fast were you going?
there was a place down in Morris that I turned. That was the one that in the spring and the fall. And I had one fellow in there, and I don't care what I was doing. He says, "What speed?" And I'd look over and tell him, do something. What speed? And tell him. I mean, this got to be. I don't care what I was doing. What speed? Finally, he says, "What speed are you turning?" I said, And a couple of our friends happened to be in the crowd, and I hear about that constantly.
So Dick, we're about the halfway point. I don't know if you've watched. You've been on some of the videos. I know you have. Yeah. So as you know, we've got something else that we typically do. Is we've got some giveaways. So if you'd be up for it, Dawn's got a couple of your books. Would you mind signing a couple books tonight?
I have no problem.
Boy, if we
The
only
only-
had a pen.
The only problem if I sign a book, it depreciates in value.
So our giveaway, I think we're going to do two of them. They're both probably the same. Will be your choice of one of the three books that Dawn's got of Dick's books here, and one of the Dick/John Spindle covers. So to enter the drawing, we'll let Dick back to talking. We'll do that in the background while you're talking, Dick. But to enter the drawing, type the word book.
Like I said, I really don't want to bore you with sanding, but I would like to go ahead and finish a piece. This piece has already been sanded and covered with glue boost, so as far as I'm concerned, it's ready to be polished. Again, letting it seek its center. I guess I didn't. Listening to you people, and what do? I put it in backwards. I don't care how good you are or how good people think you are, you still make mistakes.
Oh, I was going to say, wow, that camera's so clear, it doesn't even look like the wood's spinning.
That's how true it was.
Wow, I've never had it that true on my lathe.
Okay, again, I'm bringing the tailstock up, letting it seek its center. Now I'll lock it. Ed asked about how much water I use, what I use. I don't use any water, period. I bathe in it, I brush my teeth, and I drink it. Other than that, that's about the equivalent with water for me. Um, have I? Absolutely, I have tried it, and I really am not happy with it at times. So what I use is polishing.
You want to back the next to here?
We'll need it a little bit. Okay. Nope. Oh. Need that leg.
Okay, this is stuff that Kirk DeHeer has made, and it's a three system polish. And he also has one that's called scratch free. So I start with that one.
So is that like a sanding paste?
Yes, it has wax in it, and it's a ultra fine sander.
Okay. I wonder if that would be equivalent to like the microfine Yorkshire grit.
Yes, I'm sure it's very much like it, although I've never used that, so I really can't explain it.
How fast are you going, Dick?
So I have to say, again, you guys can't see chat, but there's a person who has put his name in for the book who's always wished that he could win something, but has never put his name in before. Usually because he's on this side of the camera. Hello, Mark.
Nice. Glad you could join us.
Excellent to see you, hear you.
Okay, that went over pretty decent. I think it. Well, I don't
Well, it
know
made
if
a
you
huge
can
difference in
see the
shine.
shine on it already.
Yeah, no, it's much different. It's much more obvious.
There's a piece of cloth in there with a black mark on it.
Piece of cloth with a black mark. I don't see cloth. I see sandpaper.
No, I don't either.
No.
See it yourself too.
Right here.
Oh,
Very near.
And it's very important. That's why I.
No problem.
I've never been a fan of putting water on a lathe. Working with metal, you didn't. You just didn't do it if you could help it. Okay, I just take a piece of paper towel and I fold it. And I put a black dot on it, just for me. Now, when I've used the first grit, I go on the opposite side of that dot. Now I'll go to the other end of this and use number 2. And you notice I wiped everything off to get the last one off of there. Now I'll go to the other side and I know which one to use for number 3. And the reason I do this is because I use this more than once. But every time I know which grid I've got by marking it like so.
So Dick, we've got a question. What grid did you go to sandpaper before you switched over to the?
600.
You?
I'm sure you can't see it like I see it, but it's
Oh, you can see the reflections very well.
Pretty
Yeah.
good, baby.
the piece of desert ironwood, and when the light catches it, it just is glorious stuff as far as I'm concerned. So I guess that's why I don't use water.
Very good. Very good, Dean. Very good, Dick, too. But it's hard to get that out.
I like you've got that little holder to hold them on there because I'd be knocking them off the lathe one at a time.
So we're in a slight break here in talking. Wayne Heber, I'm not sure. I'm noodling that, I'm sure. You're our winner. We need to know which book and which size cover.
Spindle cover.
Spindle cover.
It's out there, oh, 8.5 by 11. What size do you want it to be?
Yeah,
Oh, book cover, yeah.
book cover.
Okay, when I'm done polishing, I take it off the lathe and I lay a piece of sandpaper down on the bed and just take it and drag it across lightly. And that takes and kind of cleans off the end if there's anything foreign on there. I go over to my buffer and I have a concentric sewn wheel and I just take it and spin it one revolution or so, and one revolution holding it at about a 45-degree angle. Then I go to the soft wheel that has a higher polish on it and do the same thing. Now, the reason I do that, it doesn't take hardly a bit off of here unless it's super sharp. And when I put the pen together, you don't feel that. It breaks that very, very sharp edge. I know everybody likes to have it sharp, but I say it has to be close, but it can't be where you cut yourself on it because it will, every time you run your finger across it, you're going to feel it. My next step is I just run a piece of paper towel through it. Never seen anybody discuss that, but when I put my pens together, I don't want to send stuff that's inside the tube, dust and all that. I think it should be cleaned out. Is it important? To me, it is. Probably most people, they don't even know it. They put it together, nobody will ever see it anyway, so why take the time? I would rather take quality over quantity any day of the week. Putting it together.
So before we go to put together, we'll get a couple little breaks. There's some questions we got earlier in the day. I think
Sure.
it's a great time for them. One, Barry Anderson asked, hey, what do you finish wood with as an alternative for CA that are hypersensitive? I don't think we need to answer that question because you just did. You did not do a CA finish just now, so we're good there. The question I did.
I had a CA on it though.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, it had a CA on it. I was all set, just so I didn't go through all the sanding and stuff, which I think is kind of boring to watch. You know, sometimes it's better than paint drying, but it's still the same process. You know, if I was going to put anything on a pen other than a surface like that, I would probably either use lacquer or deft.
So
And deft is a brushing lacquer, so you could buff that stuff right out on the lathe, put it on there, and I immediately want to turn the lathe on and take a paper towel and go over it, and it will dry it immediately. You could give it a couple coats again. The new lacquer from
Lacquer
Glue
shot.
Booth,
Lacquer shot,
yep.
that is another one that's very, very good.
The second question that kind of goes with that, which is why I chased Don out to go grab the egg, because you told me about this one earlier. We talked about it. Is how would you finish a hybrid blank that had the wood kind of a satin finish and the acrylic shiny? And you had an answer, and you said we even have a demo or something to demonstrate with.
This is an egg that I turned for a pretty little lady by the name of Dawn. And I turn eggs every Easter. And a certain friend of mine threw something in the works and started giving me these type of blanks. So now I'm turning eggs that are half wood, half resin. My one granddaughter came to me and says, I didn't get a colored egg. So you know what happened. But anyway, what I do is I take that and go out as fine as I can, and then I just use depth on it. It shines it up pretty decent, and the wood is still pretty much wood. It doesn't have, if you go with glue boost, it's just going to be, everything's going to be glassy, and this is a little more uniform, I think.
And you're using semi-gloss?
Yeah.
He's busy.
Sorry, my bad. Thank you.
No
I think
problem.
that answers her questions. That's all I've got on finishing. I'm trying to map the questions to the right part of the presentation. That's all I've got.
Really?
So
I must not be doing my job. I'm not getting any questions.
You're answering all the questions as you go along. That's comprehensive teaching.
I call it luck.
Teachers union, you'll get a raise.
Putting the pens together, sometimes things just don't go together right as far as things are loose. Years ago, it was just the opposite. Sometimes the pieces would go together so hard it would actually crack the outside, and the next piece it would fall through. So I mean, today with CNC works, I'm sure what is doing it, everything fits so darn good. But occasionally you get one that it just doesn't feel right. It's not tight enough. So what I do is I use Loctite. This stuff you can knock it apart. It's not super. And
You want the blue, not. I
Yeah.
mean, they're all in a red container, but this one says blue up top. Don't get the one that says red. If you get the one that says red Loctite, you're gonna have a hard time getting it apart. You
Yeah.
just fill out the
see
bottom.
where it says blue here, 242. That's what you want.
There you go. Fill out the bottom.
And I like to take and put it on some of the threaded parts. Again, just very lightly. So
I think he's looking for
some of the threaded parts that won't be interfering when you go to change the refill and stuff. It just makes it kind of in your mind, it's not coming back.
And a little bit goes a long way.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing about putting pens together that happens very frequently. Understand that if you try to put the component in and it fights back quite a bit, check and make sure if there's glue inside your tube. I know Dick covered that thoroughly, but that's probably the most common question that I get during the course of a month. I'm trying to put this together and all these pieces are the wrong size. Nothing fits. It's way too tight, et cetera, et cetera. If you have all the glue out of the tube, your assembly will go much more smoothly.
To add real quick, with the blue Loctite, one of the things I like to do also, if I'm using the Diamond Knurl Sierra, this top finial unscrews and the nib unscrews. So when I put it together, I take a little bit of blue Loctite and I actually put it on the transmission threads and then put it together. That way, if somebody's playing around with the pen at a later date, they can't take it apart and then push that transmission up the barrel, so there's no reason to ever have to try to fix it. I put a dab of on the threads at the transmission and at the top here, so that way nothing's coming off. The only one I don't do is the nib, because that's where they'll unscrew it to change the refill. But I like that because you never have to disassemble the entire transmission to change the ink.
So you don't have the customer in there playing with it either. And one of the problems, yes, the Sierra had that issue. If they tried to put it back together, it pushed the transmission up in there,
Yep.
and then the threads will no longer engage because
They
you
can't
pushed
reach
them
them.
out of the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, as I designed this, that was one of my major goals. And accidentally, when you take the back side off of this like that, there's the transmission. So if they do screw it up in some way, shape, or form, you can push the transmission down from the top and start over without having to take the pen apart. Okay, I'll quit talking.
When I put mine together, I have a 110 arbor press and that I've worked on. I pinned it so and closed the gap up so I had a solid platform to work on. And what I like about that, I can apply pressure so easy that I can feel what's happening. Sometimes if you don't have enough force to do it, it kind of like locks up and you don't know when it's going to release or something. With this, I could feel it moving. Now, when I would go out doing clubs and stuff like that, did I take an arbor press? No. I made two pieces that were number 2 Morse tapers, short ones, with a piece of Corian on each one, and I would put one in the headstock, one in the tailstock, and actually use the lathe to put the pen together.
Mm-hmm.
So it always worked quite nice for me in that respect. Those little pieces just fit in my tool bag, and I didn't have a problem.
So I've got a couple other questions, I think, Dick. One I'm going to ask, Kent asked a pre-question to his question because I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. He said, did Dick design the Father Sing pen? If so, he's got a question for you.
Yes, I did.
So there's your answer to that, Kent. Go ahead and fire off your second question. The other one that kind of fits well at this point in time, James Reeves had asked ahead of time, Dick, what are your thoughts about choosing a component set to match your blanks? Platings, styles, etc.
That is like my wife asking me, how does this dress look on me?
What pair of shoes should I wear?
Yeah. I couldn't answer that. I think it's one of the things that you just, well, some people can dress decently and some people dress horribly. And hopefully when I put pens together, it's harmony.
It's what appeals to you.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Now, that doesn't always work because I have this certain person that probably is my biggest critic and my best critic.
Yeah.
She's also my best friend.
Yeah.
But anyway, she'll say, well, don't put that on there. Try this one. And lo and behold, 99% of the time, it's the correct one. So I can't answer that question honestly. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm like you. I'll go to my wife too and definitely always ask her input before I put something together because I may like something but overlook one of the factors. And so it's just nice to have a second opinion.
Sometimes I have this friend that brings me some of these blanks, and my wife will look at it and she'll say, "Here," and we'll go down to we'll go down the basement. She'll get whatever kit she wants and say that.
Yep.
So I mean, I think I do pretty decent on what I put together. Is it perfect? I have no idea. The thing that I like is I like it.
There you go.
Mark's not going to like this because I'm reading the questions as they are. Mark just commented nice use of the word component set. This one's actually for Ed. Mike Dole asks, do you have any new pen kits that are coming in the near future, specifically classy, not themed? In other words, we're getting overrun with theme kits these days. Anything new coming up?
Yes.
There you go, Ket. Oh, that was Mike. You got your answer.
He's down on the detail, Ed. Yes.
So, going back to Kent, he finally he did the second part of his actual question. He said he loves the pen and has made some for desk sets with the pen funnels for friends. Why does the gold ring in the center get mounted on the tube? Is it so that it can't slide around?
On the father's thing.
On your father's sing pen.
Okay. When I designed the father's sing pen, my biggest complaint was that you could take that band and push it to one side and you had a gap, push it back the other side and the gap changed sides. So it was never consistent or concentric to the pen. So that was my biggest thing about changing that. I forget where I got that piece, but I figured if I put it on the tube, pressed it on the tube, it had to be concentric all the time. I also liked the two different length tubes. At that time, there was nothing like it. Closest to come to that was the European style. Back then, they used to call it the
Mont Blanc.
Mont Blanc until Mont Blanc put a stop to that. But that was the only one that was two pieces. You had the 7mm, you had a 10mm roller ball that was straight, had a plastic snap inside the cap that would go over the piece. So, I mean, you were very limited to what you could do for pens. And I just had a bug in my butt and designed what I had for the pen. I sent it to my friend out at Craft Supply, and I had no idea it was going to end up a father's sing pen.
It's awesome.
You know what's really awesome is when you own a Father Sing pen turned by Father Sing.
Nice. Put that on my wish list. Kent says, thank you very much. He's almost forgotten to put that piece on more than once. That's all I've got for questions. Come on.
What you need?
Were you going to cast resin now?
Oh, wait.
No.
I did have one for John I missed. I'm sorry. John, this was a casting question. We were talking about the hybrids.
Uh-huh.
So he's talking about the hybrids, and he says he makes hybrids. They come out of the pot just fine. Oh, where did I lost it? But when he puts it on the lathe, they tend to separate and come apart. Any thoughts as to? Oh yeah. Whenever I clear cast, the blanks come out of the pressure pot flawlessly. But when I turn it on the lathe, the resin separates. Why? He's
So-
clear cast. So I'm guessing he's talking. Oh, go ahead.
So there could be a few things. You have to make sure that your wood is dry. And so what I'll do, first thing is I'll make sure that I remove any loose debris. I'll brush them, scrub them with a soft bristle brush, whether it be plastic or maybe brass. Get anything, if there's any wax on them, you have to remove that wax. And that's not an easy chore with wax. You may have to burn it off, melt it off. But if you can get wood that hasn't been waxed, it's better. You want to put it in the oven, make sure that it's good and dry. You want 0 moisture content. If it's not stabilized, it isn't that big of a deal, but I like to hybrid cast stabilized wood more than non-stabilized wood because there's that absorption of dyes and colorants. But warm it up before you pour your resin. So put it in the oven at about 200 degrees, 2 1/4. Let it sit in there for about an hour. That way it's going to remove any moisture on the surface, which is your biggest concern when you're going to pour resin over it. Not so much what's in it, but what's close to the surface. And then it comes down to what resin are you using. Not all resins are made the same. I use urethane resins. For a hybrid, something larger, I'm probably going to use Clear Slow. If it's a pen blank, I can use Alumilite Clear. I don't use polyester resins on hybrids, and I don't use epoxies on resins or on hybrids. So, that's what works for me.
And Regal, I'm going to put a plug in here and I'll put a link to it. I would suggest if you're looking at acrylics and stuff, John's got some really good videos. I'll link John's YouTube out here.
Okay.
Go take a look at some of his YouTube videos. I have to say, John, either one of two things is going on. Either my tracking is really good working and keeps going back to Dick because it's tracking on Dick.
It knows who's more important.
Or 2, it just
Yeah.
doesn't like you.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it's 3.
Because I'd be looking to answer questions, I look up at the camera and go,
Yeah.
Wait, John.
Yeah, it's like, all right, we've heard enough from that guy. Go back to Dick. Yeah, unfortunately, there's no one fixed answer to a question like that. You're going to have to eliminate your variables in your process, and I would start with making sure that the burl or the wood is clean, and then make sure that it's moisture free and warm when you pour your resin.
And when you're turning it, make sure you're using a fairly sharp tool. One of the things that can cause a lot of the problems that we run into is the way that you are turning it. If you are getting off nice ribbons and they're relatively thin, you're taking very little material at a time and you're putting very little stress on that blank. If you're doing some of the things that I demonstrate where I'm having a good time, if you're taking off 1/8 of an inch at a time, you're putting a tremendous amount of stress on that blank. You can run a skew across it, and yes, you can take off 1/8 of an inch at a time, but that thing will get extremely warm, and you'll have all kinds of potential difficulties with it. So basically what you want to do is make sure that you're turning with a sharp tool. You're actually cutting. You're not beating it to death. And you're trying to make sure that everything that's coming off is coming off in ribbons. That will put much less stress on your blank, and you'll have a much higher chance of success.
And if it's a really hard material, you can take it to the bandsaw and cut the corners off or sand them down on a belt sander. That way you're not hitting that hard corner, and you'll be able to maybe cut into it or turn a little easier.
If you're using polyester resin, it's not easy.
He said you're doing like a little light only, a
Okay.
little light clear slow. So
Okay.
You know,
Yeah,
you know,
so your videos should be able to help him. If not, he knows how to find you there.
yeah, reach out to me. I would say make sure that the wood is good and dry. There might be a separation there. So, but if the wood's oily, that could be an issue
But
too.
he's anything not wood. So I'm
It
guessing
comes-
he's casting labels or something maybe.
Oh,
That's
not-
issues. He
not
said
wood.
not wood.
Oh,
so-
okay.
I got another few things to say here.
Yeah.
One thing I failed to mention, when I go to put that pen together, I will take and chamfer the inside of that.
Mhm.
Those edges in there are super sharp. They're 90 degrees, and the matching piece, it's almost impossible to get it that sharp. So you just break that edge to make sure everything seats good. And what I use for that, my favorite is a cam ground single blade chamfering tool. When I say cam ground, it's ground here and then it's brought in so that this is clearance back here, and the only place it cuts is on the cutting edge. They just make a really nice cut. In fact, it's better than a scissors.
Who would use scissors?
And when I was on the road, I used to use one of these. It's a reloading chamfer tool from a gun shop. It's very small, didn't weigh a lot. I could take those along with me.
How come you didn't make a handle for that one?
I don't know. I just never did. This is a piece of carbide. It's a Dremel carbide cutter. The cutter is inside the handle. Now, what would I use that for? Take my skew and go as such and throw a burr on it. It'll take a very, very fine cut, but that burr does not last long. But sometimes you just want something that's very, very light and very smooth. You could throw that burr on there with no problem. And you got it.
You need to come over and sharpen all my tools.
Like I said, most of the things that I have, I'm notorious for not being able to just leave them alone.
I think that's what I like best about you. You're the only guy I know that will buy something new and take it home, take it apart, and redo it or tweak it, to work better.
Yeah.
So Greg asks an interesting question, Dick. I at first I had to read it twice to understand what he was asking, but actually it's an interesting question. So we all know you've got a lot of experience. Do you find anything left to be challenging?
By what?
What do you find anything? Right, you've got to still have challenges. What would you find challenging still?
Hollowing a hollow form through a real small hole. That takes patience. Uh, I've done it, uh, but I really don't care to do that all the time. I like a little bigger hole where I feel a little more comfortable hollowing things out. There are some people, Mike Jankowski, he puts big stuff through a little bitty hole and hollows it out to nothing. But that's his forte. He's very, very good at it. Mahoney is good at it. Um, Stuart Batty makes tall pieces that are that big around down to a small one at the bottom and makes cuts. Most people couldn't handle that. So, I mean, do I like to do that? I love to look at it, but Stuart does that. I don't need to do that. I think over the years, there's been a lot of times that I would have liked to done a few things that I saw other people do, and yes, I have. But most of the time, I kind of stay away from that because somebody else that's their mark. That's their thing that they do. They're known for it. They don't need me going in and making tracks all over their project. Uh, Another thing that it's I do it at times is make square bowls that are very very thin or square platters. Uh, that is a challenging thing because people don't know where that corner is out in it's actually windmilling by and you have to kind of know where it is. So yeah, that's kind of challenging. I think probably if I had one thing that I would say was the biggest challenge of all was taking something simple and making it pretty. Um, we'll go back to pens. I see people take and put all kinds of beads and stuff on pens. I look at that and I say, well, the main purpose of that pen is the right width. And if I can't hold that pen comfortably in my hand, why would I want those beads on?
Good. I got a couple more questions. Jess says, I'll ask Jess's question in a second. She says, Dick's known for pens, but your bowls are stunning, Dick. She also asks, when you're sharpening, this is going to get, people love the details. This is a speed question on a different part of your thing. When you're sharpening your tools, she asks, do you use CBN wheels for sharpening? What grit? And do you diamond hone for a last pass?
Um, that's a good question. I have CBN wheels from 60 to 300. If I was going to have one only, it'd probably be a 180. Um, I showed you the tool I was using. It was a Doug Thompson. That's a powdered metal material. And at one time, I didn't like those tools because I really couldn't get them sharp by using stone wheels or emery wheels. When CBN wheels come around, I love those tools because I could make them razor sharp with the CBN where I couldn't with the emery wheels. Now the emery wheels, they were great for roughing them, but when it came down to sharpening them, I just like a CBN wheel on that. I think one of the things that if people have emery wheels or stone wheels, they don't dress them. They have to be dressed so that they're clean because the metal shavings will go in and fill the pores on the wheel, and everything gets hot rather than just carving on it. And also, if you don't have it dressed, it doesn't run concentric, and it needs to run concentric and smooth to get a decent finish.
Thank you. Kent asks, Dick, what's your current favorite project?
Cleaning my shop.
Oh, another dig on John, I think.
I do a lot of jars with inlaid lids, and somehow I've got Christmas setting downstairs for all my family with jars. And naturally, my wife and a certain friend next to me decided that they had to be wood and resin. So I've got the inlays that John made up for me, and I'm making these jar lids with inlaid lids.
And there's a chance that we may actually make a video of you making that inlay and putting it in the jar lid. We've talked about that.
Awesome.
There is a video on making the inlays, so we're discussing possibly then a video on applying that cast. So
I love inlays. I always have. I just have made a half a hobby out of it. I like making inlays.
and you can see here some examples of the inlays.
I love the Mickey one that your wife's got.
Yes, I made her a bolo, and she was going to Disneyland, so I had to put a Mickey inside the bolo.
All right, we're getting closer to wrapping up, so I'm going to do the second giveaway, and then we can still keep talking, but I'll get the second giveaway going. Second giveaway is going to be type sing into the chat.
Want to talk about your publisher and pens and so forth, or you don't want to go into that?
I don't mind that.
People think that they want to write books. Let's give them a good opportunity to hear how that actually turns out.
Actually, the book idea started right here in Racine, Wisconsin. There was a fellow up here years ago by the name of Hank Bardenhagen that ran a turning and carving shop. His friend ran the carving end, and Hank ran the turning end. And I was up doing a demo for him, and his friend had just been to a publisher and did a book on carving. And he says, the publisher asked me, he says, do you know anybody that turns? I'd like to get into the wood turnings. So I tried, and it worked. Now, if you're going to make money off the books, keep your day job, because you're not going to make money off those books. What it did, it made my name known all over, you name it. I mean, other countries, they knew who I was. Most outside of the post office that had the picture, for wanted. But it made me well known. Once you wrote a book, your name is etched in stone, believe me. But it took me to a lot of clubs, a lot of demos, and I enjoyed doing them. My books, people comment about how good the pictures are in my books. And that was strictly on account of I went to the publisher and we shopped the books at his facility. But I had a girl that would take she'd take a light meter and I'd show her where I was going to turn, and she would take a light meter, click, 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 and then she'd get her everything ready. And I would say, okay, I'm going to do this. So I would turn, I'd say, hit it, and then she'd take the picture. Then we would stop and we would take it, and I would tell her what I wanted that picture to say. Now, it cost me more money to do that rather than if I had taken it at home and I wouldn't have had the cost of doing it there. But I would have rather had my books that look good rather than the money. Believe me. I know of one fellow that he did his own books, and I know a place that would not sell them. They were that bad photographs and stuff. So it was always good. My wife always went with me when we did it, and we would take whatever we shot that day, go back to the motel, and we would reread it. And maybe if I had to edit something, we would do that. So the books ended up, they were fun to do. I did them all in Pennsylvania, other than the bowl book, which I did in my basement. I would not do the bowl book there because he didn't have what I wanted for lathes and tools and stuff. So I actually had the girl came to my house and we shot it in my basement.
So you shot it as video, and then they changed.
No
Okay,
pictures,
So
just
it's all
strictly,
shot
as,
still.
strictly as pictures.
they got one shot out of every picture.
That's actually an impressive thing because video, you can go back, you could
Pick the best one.
watch. Well, not actually, no. Pictures I can see using the pictures because they're much higher quality than anything you pull off a video.
Yeah.
But doing it without video means
You've got
remembering the steps. And
Mhm.
I mean, how many people ask for us to put our stuff on YouTube so they can watch this stuff over and over and over again?
Yeah.
You're doing these books. If you're just taking photos, there's a lot of.
I can't imagine because any YouTube video I've made, I've had 2 hours of footage for a 20-minute clip. You know, it's
Well, the reason that I liked that was how clarity the pictures were. They just came out, but I thought was great. And by taking a picture, sometimes we took 2 or 3, and then I would take and do the captions on them. But normally we just take the picture, take the caption, and it worked out. There's a bar outside of at Glen, Pennsylvania, that has the tail end of an airplane sticking out the front of the building, and in there, the ceiling is covered with dollar bills, where people have written on there something. I have $9 bills stuck in that ceiling, or I did. I don't know. After all these years, they're probably gone, but
one for every book. Huh?
one for every book. I did a book. I'd go in and have a drink and put a dollar bill on the ceiling,
Nice.
sign it, and date it. And
Now that's worth $1.50, huh?
no, it's probably worth 75 cents.
Shoot.
No, I have been very, very fortunate in my life. They closed our plant when I was 51 years old, and my whole world came to an end. I had no idea what to do. Fortunately, I had 31 years, and I only needed 25 to retire. But I needed to be 55, and I was only 51. But we came through with a mutual, so they picked that up for me. But in the interim of being retired, I was more busy than I was when I was working. It just I like to refer to it as, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. Everything just kind of fell into place. I went to a wood turning symposium in Utah, and a guy by the name of Dale Nish kind of took me under his wing, liked what I did, and put me in there. And once I demonstrated at Utah, then that area out west knew me, and everything just kind of snowballed. Probably some of the best that I remember over the years. Been to Australia twice, once for a month and once for 5 weeks. 911, I was in Tasmania. If you don't know where Tasmania is, look at your feet. It's right below them. I woke up that morning and I was shaving and I watched the TV and I see this airplane crash into the building and I said, boy, I don't remember that movie. I watched it and it did it again. I said, wow, the guy that had the cabin where we were staying come over and I realized what happened. I saw the tape going across the top of it that said we were under siege. And from that day, I couldn't believe how well those people took care of us. I mean, we went to a motel that night. Well, naturally, the first thing the guy took us for a personal tour of his zoo or area. Even saw Tasmanian devil feeding her young. Cindy even held one, which was very neat. But we went to a motel that night and go in, and I asked the woman, when we walked in, she said, "Oh, you're Americans. Do you know what happened?" I said, "Yes, we've heard. What can we do?" I said, "I'd like to find a internet cafe." This is back a long time ago. The great home, we needed an internet cafe. She says, "You don't need one." She says, "Right over there, there's a computer. You use it." I said, "I need a laundromat where we can go do some laundry." No, 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 no. In that room in there, there's a washer, dryer, soap. She says, "Go in and use it." Her husband come walking in. "These are the Americans." He turned around and went back, and he had a web with 3 beer cans in his hands. He says, "I think you could use a coldie." But that's just the way the people took care of us, And
All this was because you were there to teach wood turning.
yeah, and I was worried how I was going to get home with my tools. And we were there until the 5th of October, which things had kind of calmed down. So we go to the airport. I throw the bag up. Guy says, "I got to go through it." I said, "No problem." He takes his hands and he just runs through it. He's not ripping things apart. First he says, "Is there anything in here that'll hurt me?" I says, "No." So he zip it up. Next one. "Anything?" "No." "Finding anything?" "Oh, a pair of scissors once in a while, blah, blah." So I got my tool bag. I throw my tool bag up, I unzip it, and I says, "This will hurt you." So he unzipped the one, and there lay my chuck. He says, "You're a wood turner." I says, "Yeah." He says, "What the hell are you doing over here?" I says, "I've been demonstrating." "Where?" "I was on Phillip Island, Wagga Wagga." I told him. "Oh," he says, "I wish I'd have known that. I'd have come and seen." He zipped everything up, and everything went through the bag. So what was the luck of finding a guy that knew what wood turning was when you had a bag full of dangerous tools getting on an airplane? Probably one of the better ones was the wood turning cruise. Uh, there's a place called Verktoy down in Stavanger, which is down in the southern western corner of Norway. Norway is very narrow, very long, very mountainous, and no roads. And they use the schooling ships for mail. And when the kids come out of school, if they want a maritime degree, they put them on these ships and teach them how to operate the ships. But they rent this ship, and the first time we were on it, there was 117 people plus the crew. So these are small ships; they're not big. Second time, they had a different ship that had 305 people on it. But they take the garage and they turned it into a virtual tool store. I mean, it just like walking into Woodcraft or any of those places. I mean, it had tools wherever you want. So we would sail at night, pull into a town noon, 1 o'clock. They dropped the front gangplank, and most of the people on the ship were tourists, and most of them were all woodworkers or turners, and they would go sightseeing. The back gangplank they dropped, and the people were lined up on the dock to pay to get on this ship to see wood turning and woodworking show and to buy tools and supplies. And I mean, I turned there, I would demonstrate, and it was great. We had carvers, we had pyrography, wood burning. It was all kinds of things going on at the same time. And then during the night, we would sail again. And we did this for 6 days until we hit the North Cape, which is roughly 1,000 miles from the North Pole. And then the next 6 days, we hit the towns we skipped on the way up. So believe me, it was great. And most of the people could talk English. And sometimes I would be turning and I'd have an older fella that didn't go to school at the right time when he was past that point. and he couldn't speak English, but there was always the guy next to him who would translate. So we never had a problem with language and stuff. So it was just a fantastic trip.
All that because you were a hell of a wood turner.
No, I'm just lucky.
Well, at that time,
I've never considered myself what a lot of people consider me. And they think I'm a fantastic wood turner. No, I turn wood. I enjoy it, do the best I can. If I can explain things, great, but I put my pants on the same way as everybody else does, one leg at a time.
at that time though, there were not. First of all, there were not a lot of kits, and secondly, the kits that were out there required a whole lot more working with them. I mean, today's turners would be shocked at some of the things that we made work.
You know,
And yeah, they're right. The concept of the father sing pen and actually moving the transmission relative to the length of the tube, that was way, way, way deep. Nobody was ever going to figure that out.
do you remember the step tubes?
Oh, sure. Oh,
Yeah,
sure.
There was
The
one.
step drills were more
Yeah,
fun.
I still got the drills at
So
home,
do I.
but the tubes were actually stepped to make it a thinner pen.
They were trying anything they could think of to try to make it look like the Mont Blanc.
Now, when I used to put the Gorilla Glue in those tubes, I had to take a rubber band and put it around the end because it would push the tube
Yep.
right out.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, and of course, CA was out, but there wasn't anywhere near the number of manufacturers of CA and anywhere.
Starbond, I think, was the only one that was out there.
Yep. Yep. And they're thick and medium were fine, but boy, they're thin. They taught you how to do this, taught you to use the thin CA. You better be fast.
When I was using cyanacrylate, I had one problem, and Cocobolo pens always sold.
Yep.
But I had such a problem of more than once the tube would be halfway in and freeze up on me. It would cure.
Yep.
So I'm sitting there one day and I said, man, that's just driving me crazy. And I says, well, if you can store that glue cold, why don't I put it in the freezer? So I would take my blanks the night before and put them in the freezer. So that when I put that cyanacrylate in there, the blank was cold and I could get it all the way in without it seasoning up.
You were smarter than I was. I watched them seize up.
But you said, I had a friend took and saw me bring these out of the freezer. He says, what are you doing with that?
As you say, the roller balls were so primitive. The clip design and all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. But yeah, you brought a lot of new ideas to it. Your books with how to augment the slimline and a couple of other people started following you, coming up with ideas as well. It was an interesting time for developing.
And I don't care who they followed, they had different things also, different mindsets. That's the thing. I do things the way I think they should be done because it works for me. Someone else comes along and has a totally different mindset, and basically it ends up the same way, but they just do it a little differently. Am I right? No. Am I wrong? No. It's just my mindset that works for me. His mindset is right, works for him.
Which is probably what made pen turning grow so fast. You could do it a number of different ways successfully. It has really it amazes me how much growth there's been in just that aspect of this sport.
Well, look how many new attendees we have every year at the APG.
Exactly.
100, 150 new people, first timers. So,
Which is awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. Back then, when I first started turning pens, the noted wood turners, I wouldn't turn a pen. Of course, it made me money. That's why.
Yeah, unfortunately, pen turning has been looked down upon over the years.
Yep. Not anymore.
But I
I-
feel, yeah, we've had more advancement in pen making, and I feel sometimes there's more detail and time put into constructing a blank and turning it than turning a small bowl or something.
I don't sell pens anymore, but I'm a real sucker for I find a pretty piece of wood and I just got to turn it. And I have a box that's all full of turned pieces that are not assembled, but they're just, I told John if he needs some, he knows where to come and get them.
Don't tell people that. Like, I'm running low on feathers. Do you need some? I got some blanks. No, shh, don't tell nobody.
No, I've always enjoyed pens. They've always been fun, and they still are. Hope I never lose that fun part of it.
Well, yeah, the best part about them is it doesn't take all week to make one. You get a little
Nice.
instant gratification. You get to see it completed. And
I went to my doctor here a few months back, and I took him a nice 2-piece roller ball. So I went back for my next appointment, and I gave him another Sierra. He says, "Oh, good." He says, "Because I don't use the other one." I said, "Why not?" He says, "I have it in a safe." I said, "You got to be joking with me." He says, "No." He says, that thing is too pretty. I could not use that. I had to give him another pen.
he knew what he was doing.
That's worked out just fine.
So
Yeah.
we got one final comment. I mean, we're at 8 o'clock, so we're gonna probably start wrapping up. We got one final comment. One, I think, really good question that we could answer too here that came in. The comment was from our buddy Mark. Says bowl turning is a great starter project before you go pro as a pen maker.
Yep.
Puns says I'm new and I'm just using wax and shellac as a natural finish, but concerned with longevity. Any thoughts?
It doesn't last.
I did point out to him to go check out, if he hasn't seen it yet, the Glue Boost videos we've got, because again,
Yeah, lacquer,
Fabulous finish.
blue boost, or some form of lacquer, something a little more protective.
Over time, that has evolved. When we started doing this, when Dick said Deft, I thought, yeah, I remember. I believe he used Deft the first time he started making pens.
Yeah.
And so those products have been out for a long time. But then there are also the CA products, and Glue Boost is now into the lacquer. Those things. The reason you didn't see much lacquer. It used to be forever for that stuff to dry. And I used to make pens that were wood very, very seldom. I've made almost all plastic. But when I make a wood pen and start in my basement putting lacquer on it, it was a 2-week process. And if I was lucky, it would dry. So, now with the lacquer shot, I've made 4 or 5, not a lot, but 4 or 5 pens with it on the lathe here, and it's 4 or 5 coats, and you're good to go. So, there's so much more out there, and so many more products that will give you durability. Now, if you're making pens and you're planning on just giving them to your friends, you may be satisfied with whatever the finish is.
But those are good practice pens too.
Yeah,
If you're making them and giving them away, then it's a great time to practice on your finishes and experiment with new things. See what works best for you.
But when you're making them so that you can take them out to sell them, as both Dick and I did for many years, if you don't make a very fine product, I guarantee you someone will point that out to you loudly at the next show. So there's a very strong motivation to make a product that will endure time. And yeah, as Dick says, we joked about that this morning. As he says, there are people who put them in the safe. And that's wonderful. You like that customer. Then the next guy down the road is going to put it on the dashboard of his car and park in a parking lot that's 110 degrees and let it sit there for 8 or 9 hours and come back and ask you why it didn't endure very well. So, part of it is teaching your customer, and part of it is using products that are meant to survive longevity. So yes, Dean points out to me that we're at 8 o'clock, and I honestly had no idea until about 10 minutes ago. I have enjoyed this session more than I can ever say publicly or privately.
Went by quick.
I enjoyed Dick, and of course enjoyed having everybody here for a change, except Mark. And Mark is keeping
Here.
track of us. He's
Here.
enjoying a baseball game at the same time. So thanks to all of you for attending.
Thanks again. There's a lot of comments. Everybody, this is definitely well received.
Good. Anything you'd like to say in closing, Dick?
Thank you for having me. It's been fun for me.
Good.
Awesome.
Good.
I hope I gave some people some ideas.
That's all we're here for.
That's
We can
it.
keep on passing along a few things. They hopefully will enjoy it. So that's all for today. I want to thank you and say good night, and look forward to seeing you a month from now. And also there will be a couple of videos coming out. If you follow my videos or John's videos, both of us have a couple that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So there is new stuff, and the longer answer to the gentleman who asked about, am I working on anything new? You betcha. I'm having a wonderful time, but I can't talk about any of it yet because it's nowhere near finished.
Every time we get together, the list gets longer.
Exactly true. As we get John and Dean here, the things that they dream up.
Oh yeah, we came up with some nice ideas just sitting around, all of us tonight. So it's exciting and fun.
So thank you again. And with that, we will sign off. Will we sign off?
Yes, we will.
We will sign off. He's working on
Yeah, why
it. He can't find the off button. He found the off button.